One, two, three.
It's my privilege and honor this afternoon to be the one introducing three speakers. The topic this afternoon is realizing the divine within. We have Krimis Peter, Vinayak Pandya, and Tranthi Kimdew. I don't have any specific order. At this stage, I'll invite the first speaker this afternoon, who will be Vinayak Pandya. Vinayak Pandya was born and brought up in Mumbai in 1955. His parents, uncle and auntie, were theosophists, so he's been brought up in that environment. His family was directly and actively involved in setting up Shri Hajvan Ashram Roj at Kadori, Gujarat. Vinayak Pandya has graduated in commerce from University of Mumbai and is practicing as a chartered accountant for more than 37 years. He has been a member of the Theosophical Society since 1972. He joined through T.S. Lodge, Shri Hajvan Ashram Lodge, Kadori, attached to the Gujarat Federation of the Theosophical Society. Vinayak has worked briefly at Bonja Sara and the Treasury Office at Adyar. Later, he transferred his membership to Vasanta Lodge, Santa Cruz, Mumbai, in which he has been active. In the Bombay Theosophical Federation, he is at the moment the president. During his tenure as Indian Section Council member for last 10 years, he has been able to impress upon fellow members to avoid erections, bitterness, and rather work in a harmonious theosophical way and take decisions on consensus. He has a privilege in attending conventions under presidentship of Brother late N. Sriram, late Mr. John Coates, late Dr. Radha Bania, and now Brother Tim Boyd. He has come across many theosophical leaders and also attended many lectures by Jiddu Krishnamurti. He is also associated with Theosophical Order of Service activities. He is also associated with other social organizations. He is taking active initiative in tree plantation movement in North Gujarat. Brothers and sisters, I present to you Vinayak Pandya.
Thanks for introducing me so nicely. My co-speakers on the dais and all fellow Theosophists, sisters and brothers. Today, I am going to talk on realizing the divine within. We have been always experiencing in our life on every moment that there is no clarity. Our mind is always changing. It jumps from one side to another side. When we are here, it thinks something else. Mentally, we go somewhere else. That's a problem that we always have. When we come to Varanasi for convention, we are thinking of, no, how will I go back with so much cold and these and other things? Now, this means that we are not living in present, we are living in future or in the past. The Buddha says that do not dwell on the past. Past has already gone. Do not think of the future. Live in the present. The more and more we live in the present, more and more the divine will come within us. We will try to understand, and we should focus on whatever we are doing. We have to make attempts to understand ourselves. We cannot realize divine without understanding ourselves. There is no one else who can come and teach me, or only I can have a guidance from somebody. And this guidance, I get it at many places. This we can have to experience. And what do we mean by divine? Divine is, sometimes we feel it's like God, it is something deity, or it is something, the third principle of the Theosophical Societies says that there is the unwritten laws of the nature which we have to investigate. So these are the thing is also a part of divine, and this is the divine what we have to realize. And one has to understand in the life that one must live in present, and one should not make an attempt what one cannot change. There are certain things which we are not able to change, and when I cannot change it, I should not make anything about it, or I should not. Then how do I realize within me? Is it automatic, or I must make an attempt? I must do what reading, studying, analyzing, attending the lodge meetings, attending the other meetings, and not accepting what has been told by anybody, but I have to make myself understand, and whether it appeals to me, whether I am able to realize it, then whatever I do it, I have to make a serious attempt that since I am a theosophist, what principles I learn, am I putting in my life, in my practice, and the wisdom that we have, the theosophical wisdom has been given to me by our founders and other leaders. But there is a practical theosophy also. That practical theosophy is implementation of whatever the knowledge that I have. One of the biggest enemy of us is anger. Does anger help anybody? We come spontaneously. Now it's like sheep is there, and sheep will shrink provided the water comes in. So outside me, there are other people who want to do something to me, and as in our lodge meetings, our senior member says, nobody else should be able to make you lose your temper or anger. It is you who has to decide whether you should lose an anger or not. Over a period, if we make this attempt, definitely we will succeed. And once we succeed into this, many of the problems of our life will get resolved, and we will be able to follow the principles of the Theosophical Society. Many a time we criticize and we do not think of an improvement. We do not, most of the people will suggest that do this, do that, but nobody wants to come forward and solve the problem or help the people. As a theosophist, we should not make a criticism, but we should always be a party for improvement. And once we do the improvement, then only the things will be better. I can tell you a story on this, the criticism and improvement. That there was a student who passed his painting course. After passing the painting course, he made a beautiful painting. He displayed the painting on the roadside crossing, and below that he wrote that I am a new painter, I have just taken a graduation in painting. Please mark cross wherever the mistakes I have made. And he went home. At the end of the day, when he comes, his whole picture was marked with the cross, something like that. He was so disgusted that this young man went to his teacher and asked, I have not learned anything from you, although you have taught me everything, and I feel like dying. I cannot be a painter. His master said, don't worry, young boy, don't have tears. Leave it on me. Do what I want, whatever I tell you. He said, make another painting of the same thing and come back to me after 2 days. He made a replica of the same painting and went to his teacher. His teacher says, now I will come with you. Put it on the same place where the earlier painting was put. But this time the teacher wrote that I am a new student. I have made this, and those who want find any mistakes, please improve it. I am putting my brush and other materials. At the end of the day, when they went back to see the painting, nobody did anything. For a week, nobody did anything. For a month, nobody did anything. Because when the question comes improvement, nobody was prepared to do improvement. Everybody was interested in making the criticism. So we as a theosophist try to be always a party for an improvement rather than a criticism. Then once this is done, we will be able to come up in the life, and this will help us a much more in realizing the divine within us. How do we generate this? How do I get divine? How do I get myself improvement? Is learning myself, understanding myself. Understanding myself can start with wash the breath that every day that I do. 30 seconds in a day, if I observe my breath, that's more than enough. Then slowly, steadily, I can go for meditation and other things. Or alternatively, whatever I do, I should do it with 100% concentration in present. If I am talking now, I should talk only and do nothing else. If that 100% concentration is also a part of meditation, meditation does not mean that I should sit on a one particular corner and do something or the other thing. Then our motto of the Theosophical Society is there is no religion higher than truth. Truth is a relative term. Everybody feels that it's a true. But this is to be digested. What I mean by digested means what I practice. I have to ask myself whether I am honest enough in what I am doing, what I am supposed to do. And if I practice that, that only I can become a theosophist. It's not by just merely becoming a member of the Theosophical Society, one is a theosophist, but one has to follow the truth part. And what is the truth? Here I will tell you a small story for the honesty and the truth, because that makes more sense. That Professor C.V. Raman, who had won the Nobel Prize also, after his retirement, he wanted to do something for humanity and he wanted to set up an institute at Bangalore. He advertised in the paper for prospective scientists to come and join him. There were hundreds of people came. thinking that at least they will be able to meet Professor C.V. Raman. From that hundreds of the people, only the 5 people were shortlisted, and the 5 shortlisted people were interviewed by Professor C.V. Raman, and from that, further 3 people were selected, shortlisted, who were to be interviewed next day. Next day, while Professor Raman was walking, one young boy came and he said, "Sir, I want to meet you." He said, "Yes." And he immediately realized that this was one of the 2 persons he has rejected yesterday. And he's one of them. He said, "Yes, what has happened?" He said, "Yesterday I was given a traveling allowance and 7 rupees were given extra to me. I told the accounts people, take back 7 rupees, I have not spent that money. My expenses were much less than that. But they were not accepting. They said the accounts were closed, everything, and you can enjoy the money. I feel like I should not have that 7 rupees extra with me." So Professor Raman said, "You want to return? Return it back to me." And started walking. Little walked and then he came back. He said, "Young man, please come after 2 days and meet me." After 2 days when he came, he selected him for the job. He said, "I'm creating an additional post for the job, and you have failed in physics, but you have succeeded in honesty and truth." So the truth made that boy get a job, and that gentleman became Professor Subramanian Chandrasekharan, who was later on an US citizen and of an Indian origin. So he had written a book that what honesty makes difference, what the truth makes difference, and the truth is to be practiced, and once you practice it, come what may be the difficulties, you will definitely succeed. As Einstein says, do not try to be a man of success, but always be a man of value. And if you value what you are thinking and whatever we are doing, that has to be the truthfulness. Another thing that we talk of love. Krishnamurti ji has also said many times about the love, and the true love, the selfless love. Here the love in theosophy, what we understand, is a selfless love where we are not expecting anything, and what we are practicing, that is there. Many of the people who are here, our delegates, are attending the convention regularly. You must have heard P. Narayan Murthy, who had come to Adyar during the convention and given the lecture, isn't it? So before I conclude my views, I will tell a real story of Mr. Narayan Murthy, what he has narrated, and that will make the selfless love what it can be, and it will prove a point. That once in a morning, Narayan Murthy was reading a newspaper. His wife shouted, "What are you reading newspaper? Can you please come and help and make your daughter have a breakfast?" Narayan Murthy just thrown away the newspaper and went there. His daughter Sindhu was sitting there. She was crying. There was a bowl full of curd rice, and they wanted her to eat the entire curd rice. She was crying. Then Narayan Murthy said, "Darling Sandhu, can you please take something for me? For my sake, 1 or 2 spoons, 1 or 2 spoons for your grandmama and 1 or 2 spoons for your mummy." She said, "Yes, Dad, I will take. And if you wish, I will take the entire bowl also, but provided you give me a promise that what I will ask you, you will do it for me." Then for both handshake, daughter and father, the deal is done. I will give you what you want. But then Narayan Murthy realized, say, "Sindhu, please don't ask computer or any expensive article from me after eating, because I can't afford at this juncture, because this was the beginning of his career, so I can't afford that. She said, no, I am not going to ask you the expensive or anything. She ate everything, and after everything was over, she said, Dad, now what about your promise? He said, yes, what a promise you want? She said, Dad, I want nothing expensive. I just want that my hair should be fully shaved. I don't want a single hair on my head. So immediately his wife shouted, how can a girl child do this? The grandmother was also there of that daughter. She said, no, in our culture, these children are spoiled. They're looking at the TV and all these things, nonsense, and they are doing. So Narayan Murthy said, darling, can you ask something else? Then that daughter said, no, Dad, you only told me about the Harishchandra, that once you make a promise, you have to fulfill the promise. And if you don't fulfill promise, then immediately Narayan Murthy say, yes, we will shave your head totally. And he said that if we don't keep our promise, then the daughter will also not keep her promise in the life. Then what happened was, next day Narayan Murthy went in the car to leave her daughter at the school. She had totally without an hair, waved her hand for a bye-bye and all that. Suddenly another car came. One boy came out of that. He was also not having any hair. So Narayan Murthy thought, my daughter and this boy must have made some plans or something, and that is why. So the boy went. Then another lady came from the same car from where the Harish had come. He said, what a lovely daughter you have. Then say, why? What happened? My son Harish is suffering from a cancer. He is going for a chemotherapy treatment. And because of that, he had lost all the hair. He was not coming to the school. And because without the hair, the students will unintentionally or unintentionally tease him. But your daughter promised that you come to the school, study, and I will see that nobody is doing anything. And that is the reason it's supposed that she has already shown. So they say, what a lovely daughter you have. She has done this for a selfless love for somebody else. And that is what, without expecting anything, and that is what the person has to learn in the life, that whatever we do for somebody else, it is not for expectation. And if this is done, we will realize the divine within. Thank you very much.
I will not comment. I would rather love to have all of us think about what Vinayak was trying to share with us. Our next speaker this afternoon will be Clemens Peter. A few words about her. Miss Clemens Peter is a long-time member of the Theosophical Society in Brazil. She has special interest in the teachings of Jiddu Krishnamurti, HPB, and Besant, among others. She came to India, Adyar, in 2014, and she's currently heading the editorial department. For over 2 years, and well before that, she's been helping in the International Secretary's office for more than 2 years also. She has given several talks at Adyar and has written many articles for the Theosophical Juno, Theosophist Juno. Miss Cremus Peter really loves Adyar, and Adyar is her home. She lives there, and I hope she will live there forever. Brothers and sisters, I present to you Cremus Peter.
Thank you. Forever is quite a long time. But let's see, we don't know. So, today we are here to talk about a subject that is quite difficult to talk about, which is to realize the divine within. Those who had realized themselves and therefore had realized the divine, they don't talk about what it is after they realize themselves. They rather talk about, sorry, I got a cold. They rather talk about what is stopping us to realize ourselves. And they say, we don't realize that we are one. We have this separative mind that sees everything from the point of view of me and you, us and them. So this separation, this idea that we are separate from each other psychologically, is what stops us to realize ourselves. So it seems that the work in this case is to eliminate this illusion, which is called by Blavatsky a heresy, the illusion of separation. So, we also talk about realization, realizing within. And we talk about divine. But what is this divine? We are not yet human beings. And yet we talk about realizing the divine. So we take for granted that we are already human beings, which we are not. We are neither animals fully, neither are we fully human beings. So we are on the way to be. And to become, and to turn into real human beings is the task. We have much of the animal in us. That is no surprise to anybody here. Those who are reading Blavatsky's work, they know that Blavatsky said that human beings are just the highest form of the animal. So the task here seems to me is not so much about realizing the divine, but to become human beings. And to move away from this animalistic nature, which is selfishness. This idea that we gather together and we form groups and we separate ourselves from others. Animals do the same. So this idea of separation seems to me comes from this animal nature that we have in us. So the task really is to, for so to say, clean ourselves from this animal nature and develop the human nature, which is kindness, love, and unity. It seems to me that spirituality, this spiritual life that we talk about, is a sub-product of the human. Once we become humans, we turn into real humans without a single trace of animal in us, then we can talk about spirituality. And then we may not talk at all, because then there may be no need for it. We talk about this realizing within. What is this within that we talk so much? Is it not our psychological state, what we are psychologically? So, in the psychological world, we know nothing about it. And I am not talking about the psychological that the psychologists talk about. I am talking about the motives, the hidden motives that drives our life. And the laws that govern that world, the psychological world. We have physical laws that govern the physical world. And we also have psychological laws in the psychological world. And we know nothing about that. So in the psychological world, we are blind. We cannot see. We don't see what we are. We don't see the consequences of what we are. We don't see what we are doing, the consequences of what we are doing. And the result is the world we have created with our limitation, which is this world of violence, war, competition, which is destroying the planet in which we live. And we are integral part of this planet. So I wonder, if we destroy that the planet in which we live, what will happen to us? We also take for granted that we may go to another planet. I don't know about that, because there is a responsibility to what we do. So, it seems that we have to learn about our psychological world, what we are in reality. What are these hidden motives that we don't know anything about and that are driving our lives? We very quickly justify anything we do, but real motives we don't know. So, because we cannot see in the psychological world, we create, for so to say, crutches and walking sticks to help us to walk about in this world, the psychological world. These crutches and walking sticks are our beliefs, our certainties, our conclusions. And these crutches are also preventing us to see, because we believe that because we can move about with them, we see. To see really, directly, what is what we have to do. And we don't know how to look. So we really need to start to pay attention to and turn within. and to learn how to look, because we don't know how to look. We don't want to look. We are trying to avoid this, and we cling to our certainties, we cling to our beliefs, our religious dogmas. So it seems to me that when Krishnamurti says the first step is the last step, he is talking about once you see in the psychological world, once you can see, the job is done. So friends, I think we should concern ourselves of becoming humans first. We cannot take for granted anything. The divine seed is in everything, is in the plants, it is in the dogs, in the cats, in the small butterfly, and of course it is in us. But as a seed, not when you sow seeds, some of them sprout, some of them don't. And Jesus even said that he was sowing, and sometimes the seeds he was sowing was falling into the rocks. Which means, it seems, when we have a closed mind, enclosed in our beliefs, when we know everything and we are very sure about things, we become like rocks. Our mind is so closed, it cannot be opened. And then no seed will sprout. And Blavatsky also said that the self of matter and the self of spirit never meet. So, for the spiritual shine through us and manifest in this world, the animal has to die. The animal nature, the animal in us. They never meet. So, that was what I had to share. Thank you for listening to me, and have a good convention and a happy new year to everybody.
The other day, when I was being asked to introduce Madam Tranthi Kimdu, I was wondering whether she really needs introduction. Our topic today, still realizing the divine within. The third presentation is going to be made by Tranthi Kimdu. Madam Kimdu was born in 1949, and she joined the Theosophical Society in 1972. She's a postgraduate in pharmaceutical technology. Tranthi Kimdu is the chairperson of the European Federation of the Theosophical Society, and a former General Secretary of the French section. Madam Kimdu gives monthly courses at Paris headquarters, since 1987. She speaks at many summer schools, seminars, and congresses, European School of Theosophy, Crotona Institute, and conduct few School of Wisdom sessions at Adyar. She has toured lecturing in New Zealand, Singapore, Australia, and Canada. She conducts meditation retreats in Europe. Madam Tranthi Kimju, please, the audience is waiting for you.
Good evening to all. Friends, I am very glad to share with you some of my thinking and understanding. I have some hesitation because you are all learned. So learned that I have nothing more to add to your knowledge, except raising some questions amounting to only one at the end. And that one, nobody can answer at your place. Very often, when I observe the human phenomenon, I am amazed to see that the majority is involved in constant activity. This happens because people are compelled to earn their living, or supposedly because they are under the pressure to act. The unceasing struggle for survival is a curse of a sort, which humans are not ready soon to rid of. Naturally, I'm not talking about the working class, who are meant to contribute in a way or in another to the human society. Because after all, having a decent, ethical job and taking care of one's family is part of spirituality. I'm talking about these who are enmeshed in the hectic trend of events, drawn by an inner urge which is not yet understood. It is not understood despite all explanations given by generations of diverse instructors. It is not because it cannot be done by whatever instruction given. It cannot be done because it can be only done by the concerned people, individually. Also because any collective understanding is a result of individuals' ones. It is rather amazing to observe that most of humans live as if they are going to last forever. They know, theoretically, that each one will die one day, but they don't have the real feeling that their life belongs to the temporary and that every instant draws them nearer to the physical end. The unconscious wishing to prolong one's life is so strong that they cannot resist the thrust of achievement. That way of unconscious living, running by itself, generates its own energy by repetition. This merry-go-round can continue for a long time, for lifelong, for many lives. If the individual could spare time to feel the inside and could go beyond boredom, a question may pop up in the mind. Is there any ending at all? This question asked by oneself to oneself will soon trigger reflection. It manifests the first doubt about the spell generated by mechanical living. It may not bring a sudden reaction, but it will simmer for some time. When it has cooked enough by a curious mind, an inquiring mind, the latter will take a mild turning point in tentatively opting for a positive answer. Yes, there must be an end. I'm not certain, like the certainty of a dogmatic. But let experience and see what will happen. From the doubt of the spell of a mechanical life, the individual has moved to the first questioning. The mechanism of the merry-go-round starts now to crack. One question, one step, up to the end. The end of the merry-go-round, which a learned student would call samsara, the world of appearance. Yes, definitely, all have an end. Nevertheless, before the end, one's own, one would try to move it further to the farthest by keeping it in the unconscious. But in daily life, one cannot but manifest the life within. Moreover, in the land of truth-seeking, there can't be any seeming or faking or pretending. In fact, who are humans? Who am I? And rather, to be more appropriate, what am I? Being part of the drifting phenomenon of humanity, the network of relationships impart to me an identity. I wear a name which was given by my parents and which is being used by the network that took place by mere convention. Suppose I have no relationship at all with anyone. My supposedly pretended identity may suddenly vanish. This is the case of several pensioned people who may fall into a depressive state due to the lack of recognition of their identity because the circle of relationship has shrunk into these of the family or none. With some pause, one can ask about the nature of what is behind this identity, behind what is recognized by the surrounding people. With a good karma and a little bit of attentive observation, one may discover a great truth, the absence of factual ground of one's identity. In fact, the identity one has taken for granted to be something real has no real existence, unless it is related to all elements which define it, and therefore there cannot be a separate self-existence. All is related, linked in a vast network which is commonly called life, so much so that each identity can be defined only by this interdependence. So each human being not only is impermanent, moreover, it is temporarily and it exists solely by interdependence with all the others. This amounts to say that this poor human being who pretends to live as a real someone may at the end of this incarnation die, accompanied by the certainty of being someone, separated from others. The great heresy of separateness is now consumed. it cannot be denied that this heresy regulates most of the time our dealing within the network of relationships. Then another question necessarily arises. How can one get out of this limitation? Impermanence, interdependence, the two characteristics of what is manifested are facts. Although undeniable, they do not constitute the truth. They belong to the domain of what is attainable. Proofs have been given by generations of seers who were living beyond this level. Life is consciousness, as all of us know, and consciousness has many levels. Students of theosophy were taught that evolution takes place on 3 levels: the physical, the intellectual, and the spiritual. Each of them has a different trend of its own. Allying the two teachings, one can understand that even highly evolved individuals may undergo diseases and eventually die. Indeed, the bodies vanish. Other subtle components also follow the process of disappearance, because what is composed must disintegrate. Nevertheless, their consciousness remains in a subtle form, where, due to a different appreciation of space and time, the impact of impermanence and interdependence is less perceptible. The seers have gone to some extent beyond the consciousness limitation of narrow space and short time. Since the body and the mind must be dropped at a certain moment, seers have dropped them at some point during their earthly life. Between the consciousness of an insect and the consciousness of a human, the evolutive distance is tremendous. Between the consciousness of human and the one of the adepts, the evolutive distance is incommensurable. The students can also read the words of Master K.H., and rather, he can listen inwardly to his voice. No adept consciousness can go further than Mula Prakriti, the root matter. One can wonder then about that state of consciousness at the edge of the extreme limit of what may still be called matter. The student may then ask, is matter at that level a substance? Does this substance, in another terminology, correspond to Svabhavat? And what is it? For the moment, let us leave the question open and let us move towards another aspect. Again, one can read from Master K.H. that matter is eternal, that it is in constant motion. One can understand that as it is, matter can never be destroyed, nor its movement can be stopped. Would it be shocking for some minds here present to find the presumption that consciousness is this matter in constant motion? Is it shocking for us to think that consciousness is this matter in constant motion? In this perspective, eternity is not a static state, but an everlasting movement of the substance matter, which by nature was, is, and will ever be. It was said earlier that the seers have gone to some extent beyond the consciousness limitation of narrow space and short time. Space is not different from its content. which is eternal substance matter. The seers can live on the level of consciousness corresponding to the subtlest state of matter. An adept, again according to Master K.H., is an adept when he is exercising his power of an adept. Otherwise, his consciousness may be at times unaware of the surrounding, like an inattentive person. An example was given concerning Dry Cool, who on some occasion hit his toe and bled abundantly. Here arises the question of time. Being eternal means everlasting. Being timeless has a nuance. Being timeless is to be out of the range of time. One can think of the divine as being timeless and not only eternal. But the divine one thinks of is a concept and not the reality. The human mind at a certain moment can be obsessed by this concept of the divine. And this obsession is a blessing of a sort. It is a blessing of a sort because since the divine is considered the final goal, evolved humans want to get nearer to it. To say that one is nurturing the divine seed, is a figure of rhetoric, because in fact, it is the divine seed that nurtures all beings. Realization of the divine within is equivalent then to the identification of oneself with the divine. This corresponds to the vanishing of the personal ego. Now, basing on those teachings and keeping open in mind the questions above asked, one may take the whole as the foundation of the practice. So many instructions advise several indications for practice. Good humans follow the instructions. A small number succeeded, a great number failed. Those who failed were given the promise to succeed with another attempt. The practice consists of several parts, of which ethics is non-negotiable. Naturally, each serious student and truth seeker will not neglect it. This part pertains to the attainable world, that of humans. But humans are called for getting out of this world of appearance by going beyond it, by not ignoring it or by bypassing it. Going beyond means transcending, having completed the understanding of impermanence and interdependence. In other words, the actual seeing of the temporality of things, events, and people, as well as the absence of a separate self. Now training the mind, understanding the nature of emptiness, form the other parts of training and practicing. All the practice of mindfulness, meditation, with various methods, when applied in the correct way, will help bring the student's practitioner out of the realm of appearance. The matter of time again pops up with this legitimate question. When is one apt to realize the divine? A story relates that a disciple of Ramana Maharshi, being so eager to advance on his spiritual path, inquired about his state by asking the seer, where am I on the road regarding the divine? Ramana answered, a cow is nearer the divine than you. What a blow. Some traditions explain that the cow is nearer because it is on its going out way, while a human who has been on its outgoing way to the farthest now is on its return journey, back towards the divine. But if a cow is nearer the divine than a human being, how long it will take to a human being to realize the divine? It's a long way, progressive in its move towards the divine, isn't it? But as mentioned, the divine that one thinks of is just a concept and not the reality. How then to approach this reality through a concept? How to realize the timeless with a mind imprisoned within time? But can the mind be used as a finger pointing to the moon and help the seeker to see the moon itself? If the answer is no, then there will be no possible solution. Then what is the divine? One can possibly say that it is the origin of all things and at the same time the goal of all. It is here and now in space-time and simultaneously transcending space and time. Since the divine is the timeless, how can one think of realizing it with time? It leads back to the unity that HPB talked of in her meditation diagram. It says, conceive unity in expansion in space and infinite in time. In this space, ever in expansion, there is no heresy of separateness, and time is the infinite. Only one question remains. What is that? Is it not that that is mentioned in the Upanishads as thou art that? Coming back to Svabhavat, the substance matter, forever as such and forever in motion, it may be presumed to be the pre-ultimate state of consciousness preceding the divine. The student may then understand the allegory that one can approach the divine as coming nearer and nearer to the light, but never one can touch the flame of unity where one merges in infinity. Pondering over, inquiring about that may perhaps draw the inquirer nearer the divine and its infinity. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for not sleeping.
That was the third and final sharing from Thram Thekimji on the subject, realizing the divine within. Just as a reminder, the first speaker, Vinayak Pandya, if you listen to his biodata and the talk, they were the same. Like he talked like the biodata says about him. Truth must be practiced. Kremes also reminded us that talking about realizing the divine within, it's because we are not self-realized. That's why we are trying to remind ourselves on how to become what we want to be. In the introduction, Thram Khemju says life is lived by most of us like merry-go-round. Life is going to continue, we will continue enjoying and living. But there comes a question as to when will there be a stop to all these things? And if there will be such a stop, then obviously that's the beginning of looking at or going inside within to discover what we really are. She talked about consciousness, she talked about the divine being eternal and then relative to time, but we have to work within this time here to realize the divine within. Thank you for listening, and this is the close of this session. Thank you.